Aw, shit, that was really good.
Lila said, snapping the laptop shut. She looked at me like I was about to say something dumb. Yep, I said, stretching out on the couch. Horrifyingly good. I swear I could listen to that man read like a tax manual. His voice is just. Lila rolled her eyes, her lips quirking into that half smirk she does when she's about to one-up me.
You don't know what you're talking about. Dark Somnium has the real voice. Creepin's good, but Somnium? He's got that edge, you know?
Edge? Sure, I scoffed. Creepin's the creepy uncle we all wish we had. Dark Somnium? He's just dark,
Exactly.
she said, sitting up straighter.
That's the whole point. Somnium makes it feel real.
Whatever. You're wrong, but whatever. The light from the TV flickered across the room, throwing strange shadows on the wall. Maybe it was the leftover adrenaline from Creepin's story, but those shadows looked restless. So, I said, shaking it off, what's your takeaway? Necrosleep, huh? She let out a long breath and tucked her legs under her.
It's obviously about addiction. Pills that make you feel invincible at first, but then turn you into a paranoid cat murdering psycho? That's like Creepypasta 101.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if it worked?
You fucking serious? Were you even listening? The guy went insane. Dylan, he killed his cat.
You're worried about the cat? Babe, the dude ate his dad. That shut her up for a second. Her eyes narrowed.
You don't even like your dad.
Exactly, I said, leaning forward with the biggest grin I could manage. All the more reason to take it. She stared at me for a beat, and then her laugh burst out, sharp and sudden. I joined in because, well, it was funny. When she finally caught her breath, she wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and said.
You're ridiculous.
I shrugged, leaning back against the couch. I mean, come on, imagine it. No sleep with endless focus. Just think of what you could get done.
You're describing Adderall, genius.
No, not like that. I'm talking the Bradley Cooper thing. You know, limitless, no side effects, just pure power,
Yeah, sure.
she said, standing up and stretching.
And I bet you'd be the first guy they send the no side effects version to.
Hey, someone's got to test it, right? She yawned and waved me off.
You're too much for tonight. It's late. We need to sleep. Some of us have work tomorrow.
Okay, keeping the dream alive,
Dream on, Dylan.
she said over her shoulder, heading to the bedroom. I sat there for a while after she left, the silence settling in. My mind wandered back to the story, to that strange pull in my chest. Wouldn't it be something if it was real? No sleep, no fatigue, no limits, but hey, it's just a story, right? The next morning, I found Lila at the kitchen table. She glanced up.
You were up late last night.
Yeah, couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that story.
Seriously?
She set her phone down with a sigh.
What's there to think about? It's fiction. Creepy fiction, sure. But fiction.
I shrugged. I don't know. There's something about it. The idea of it, I guess.
The idea of eating your dad?
No, smartass. The idea of not needing sleep, like ever. Lila smirked, shaking her head.
Yeah, because that worked out great for Reed Murdoch.
You're missing the point. What if something like that could exist? Like, what if someone's working on it right now? Some underground research, secret experiments. Her smirk faltered for a moment before she rolled her eyes.
You mean like that Russian sleep thing? The one where they pumped people full of gas and turned them into monsters?
That's just a myth, I said quickly, though even I didn't sound convinced. But stories like that, they've got to come from somewhere, right? Maybe there's some truth behind them. A little kernel, at least,
Or maybe people just like scaring themselves.
she said, raising an eyebrow again.
It's fake. It's literally a made up story.
Sure, I said, grinning. But what if it's not just a story? What if the idea inspired something real? Like, I don't know, some deep, dark web research. Lila nearly choked on her coffee, letting out a sharp laugh.
The dark web? You don't even know how to update your drivers. How are you going to find some secret miracle drug?
Maybe I'll learn, I shot back, smirking. She rolled her eyes and set her mug down.
Sure. Start by Googling how to find the dark web. That'll definitely end well. You'd probably get scammed in 5 minutes.
Good thing I'm broke, I said with a shrug. Let them have my student loan debt. She laughed, shaking her head as she grabbed her bag from the counter.
You're hopeless.
By the time Lila left for work, I was glued to my laptop. Most of what I found was junk. Reposts of the same creepypasta, people arguing over whether the site ever existed. But one thread stood out. There was a site, back in 2014. It's gone now, but some people say it moved to a private server. You just need the right invite. The words stuck in my head as I scrolled through dozens of dead comments and broken links. Most were dismissive. That evening, as I was sifting through more threads, my screen flickered. Just for a moment. The cursor froze and the text on the page distorted before snapping back to normal. I stared at my screen.
Seriously? You've been at this all day.
Yeah, just reading up, I said, my voice sounding far away.
It's late. Come to bed.
I hesitated, glancing back at the screen. Yeah, I said finally, closing my laptop. The next day, I found it, a link buried in an old forum post. At first, the URL was dead, just another broken relic of the internet. But something made me try the Wayback Machine, and to my surprise, it worked. The page loaded slowly, the pixels crawling into place as if the site itself didn't want to be seen. When it finally appeared, it was just a black screen with a single line of text. Access restricted. Enter invitation code. I typed in the code from the story. DCLXVI. The screen flashed red. My stomach sank, but the frustration only fueled my determination. I wasn't giving up. By the time Lila walked through the door the next evening, I had transformed our small dining table into what looked like a conspiracy theorist's workshop. Sticky notes covered the surface, each one scribbled with a website, a forum thread, or a stray thought. My laptop hummed, the screen split into a dozen tabs. Academic articles, Reddit posts, and a YouTube video of some guy rambling about the real necrosleep pills.
You're still on this?
Lila asked, dropping her bag onto the couch. She walked over and frowned at the chaos.
What is all this?
Research, I said, scribbling something on a note. She grabbed one and held it up.
Necrosleep timeline, 2014 disappearance. What does that even mean?
It's a lead, I said, snatching the note back. There are gaps in the story. If I can figure out where it went.
Where what went? It's just a story. A made up story. You're acting like it's real.
Maybe it is, I muttered, clicking through another tab. You ever think about that? She sighed, sitting down across from me.
Okay, let's say, for argument's sake, it's real. What's the plan? Find a lab? Buy mystery pills from a stranger? And then what?
I hesitated. The plan is to find out the truth.
You know who you sound like? Reed Murdoch.
Come on. I'm not writing my tragic descent into madness. I'm just curious.
Curiosity killed the cat.
Good thing I'm not Peanut, I shot back. But she was already walking away. From his perch on the couch, Peanut gave me a curious glance, his tail curling around his tiny sand-colored paws. He had a habit of staring like he was judging me. Maybe he was. That night, I stayed up late, falling further down the rabbit hole. The more I found, the more real it all felt. A blog post from 2014 described a site exactly like the one in the story, down to the eerie black screen and the invitation code. The blogger claimed the pills were more than just a scam, but didn't elaborate before the post abruptly ended. A comment thread mentioned orexin a real neuropeptide tied to wakefulness. The users debated whether necrosleep could have been based on early experiments with the compound. One thread linked to an obscure academic article, Orexin A, Enhancing Wakefulness Without Psychostimulants. The article described clinical trials where subjects stayed awake for 36 hours with no apparent fatigue. It felt like a breakthrough. It wasn't fiction. This was real science. By the time I closed my laptop, the sun was creeping over the horizon. Peanut stretched lazily on the couch, blinking at me like he couldn't believe I was still awake. The next step was obvious. If necrosleep wasn't real, something close to it might be. My late-night searches led me to a shady online marketplace buried under layers of redirects and pop-ups. It was the kind of site that practically screamed, "This is a bad idea." Most of the listings were junk. but one caught my eye. Orexin A, nasal spray, experimental use. The description was sparse: enhance wakefulness and cognitive performance. For research purposes only, not FDA approved. That alone should have sent me running, but the reviews stopped me. Each comment felt like a breadcrumb, leading me deeper into my obsession. One user claimed it gave them laser focus for 3 straight days. Another said it was life-changing, but warned against using it recklessly. What that meant, I wasn't sure. The price, however, was a slap back to reality. $300 plus international shipping. My stomach sank. I couldn't afford that. Not on my budget of frozen dinners and bargain bin energy drinks. I almost clicked away. Almost. But then I saw the shipping details. Direct from source. Ships discreetly. Processing time, 3 days. There was no origin listed. Just an ominous note. Distributed via secure networks in Southeast Asia. Something about that phrasing made it feel authentic. Dangerous, maybe. But also closer to the kind of underground operation I'd imagined when I started this whole thing. I glanced down at Peanut, who had wound himself around my legs, purring contentedly. "Don't judge me, buddy," I whispered, scratching behind his ears. His tail flicked, as if he were already skeptical. "Research purposes," I muttered under my breath. "It's an investment." Peanut let out a soft moan, as if to disagree. Ignoring him, I took a deep breath and clicked the Buy Now button. A pop-up confirmed my order, and my heart sank when I saw the charge. $350 with shipping. No refunds. The package was listed as processing, with a tracking number I couldn't even paste into Google. The website's confirmation email was riddled with typos, and the sender's address was a random string of numbers and letters. I stared at the screen for a long time, the reality sinking in. This was insane, reckless, but there was a part of me, a growing part, that didn't care. Peanut hopped onto my lap, settling down with a judgmental huff. I scratched his head absently, my mind spinning. Leaning closer, I whispered conspiratorially, "Don't tell Mommy, okay?" His big green eyes wide and unblinking. Judgmental, but silent. Good enough for me. The package didn't come 3 days later. Or 4. Or 5. By the end of the week, I was practically glued to my laptop, refreshing the tracking page every 5 minutes. The status hadn't changed once. Processing at origin. By the 6th day, I gave up. I had been scammed. I could feel it in my gut, the same twisting shame that came with every bad financial decision I'd ever made. I'd thrown away $350 on a pipe dream and had nothing to show for it. Worse, I couldn't explain it to Lila. She'd been side-eyeing me all week, asking pointed questions I dodged with half-hearted excuses. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. Peanut wasn't helping either, silently judging me from the armrest of the couch like he knew exactly what I'd done. On the 7th day, I was scrolling through forums again, trying to distract myself, when the doorbell rang. I froze in my chair, staring at the door like it might bite me. It couldn't be real. My tracking status hadn't even updated. Slowly, I got up and opened the door. It was a plain brown box, no logos, no return address, the shipping label barely hanging on. It looked cheap and slapped together, like someone had thrown it together in a rush. I picked it up and held it for a long moment. Was it legit? Or was this just part 2 of the scam? I didn't get the chance to find out.
What's that?
I spun around, the box still in my hands. Just some computer parts.
Computer parts?
She walked into the living room, her arms crossed, her eyebrow arched, skepticism written all over her face.
Since when did you do that?
"It's for maintenance," I said quickly, setting the box down on the coffee table. "You know, tools and stuff."
Oh, tools, huh?
She stepped closer, eyeing the box.
Since when do you care about maintenance?
"I thought I'd give it a try," I said, my voice cracking slightly under the weight of her gaze. "Save some money in the long run."
And how much did we save on these tools?
300.
$300?
"It's not a big deal," I said, reaching for the box, but she held up a hand to stop me. She tore the cardboard flaps open in one sharp motion,
What the hell is this?
pulling out the nasal spray. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it up. the tiny bottle looking even shadier out in the open. It's nothing.
Nothing? You spent $300 on this?
It's for focus.
Oh my god, are you even listening to yourself? You actually thought this was a good idea? This is what you've been sneaking around about? This little thing? Are you kidding me? Dylan, you don't even know what's in this. You could be spraying battery acid up your nose for all you know.
It's not like that. It's safe. People use it all the time.
What people? The ones on whatever shady website sold you this?
I didn't know how to respond. She stared at me for a long moment, her mouth tightening. Then, with a sigh of frustration, she let the spray drop onto the counter with a hollow clack.
I can't believe you. This this is next level stupid.
Her words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth to respond, but she didn't give me the chance. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the spray. It wasn't supposed to feel this bad. That night, I woke to the sound of shattering glass. My first thought was Peanut, but when I walked into the kitchen, I froze. Lila was standing by the counter, holding the nasal spray. The shattered glass of a coffee mug lay at her feet. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't answer right away.
I'm proving a point.
She said finally. She pressed the nozzle before I could stop her, inhaling a quick burst of the spray. My stomach churned. She stood in the kitchen with the nasal spray still in her hand. She was perfectly fine. She even smirked at me.
See? Nothing to worry about.
"You scared the hell out of me, you know that?" She shrugged, setting the spray on the counter.
Well, maybe now you'll stop obsessing over this necrosleep nonsense.
I wanted to believe her, to take that moment as proof that she was right and I was wrong. But there was something about her eyes. They were sharp, yes, but also flat, almost too focused, like she was seeing something I couldn't. Still, I told myself it was fine. She was fine. And maybe, just maybe, I'd been overthinking everything.
Now that you've proven your point, can we finally go to bed together? Or is that couch your new obsession?
I woke to the sound of something wet being torn apart. The noise wasn't loud, but it was persistent. A rhythmic, sickening sound that made my stomach churn before I was fully awake. The room felt heavy, as if the air itself was trying to keep me in place. The noise was coming from the living room. The scene before me didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to process it. Lila was crouched on the floor, her back to me. Her hands were sticky, red. Her hair hung around her face in messy tangles. Beneath her, a small, unmoving form twitched once, then stilled. "Lila," she froze, her head snapping up like a startled animal. When she turned to look at me, her face was covered in blood. Her eyes were wide, wild, and unrecognizable. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. What? What did you do?" She tilted her head, her lips curling into something that might have been a smile or a snarl. "You need help. We need to call someone. You're not... This isn't you." She didn't move, didn't blink. The blood on her hands dripped onto the floor in soft, rhythmic splatters. When she lunged at me, it was like watching a wild animal. She was rabid. I barely managed to dodge her, slamming into the wall as she clawed at the air where I'd been standing. I shouted, my voice echoing in the tiny apartment, but she wasn't listening. She wasn't my Lila anymore. I barricaded myself in the bedroom, shoving the dresser against the door. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath. Outside, I could hear her moving, fast, erratic. She was laughing, muttering words I couldn't make out. Bloodstains streaked my hands from trying to stop her. Peanut's blood. Suddenly, the noises outside stopped.
Dylan.
Her voice called out, soft and sweet. Not the snarling, growling thing from before, but the Lila I knew.
It's okay. I'm fine now. Please, open the door.
My hands clenched into fists. My body screamed at me to believe her, to open the door and let her in, but my mind wouldn't let me.
Dylan.
She said again.
I'm scared. I don't know what's happening to me. Please.
I pressed my back against the dresser, tears streaming down my face. The doorknob rattled.
It's me. I promise.
And then the rattling stopped. The door groaned under the weight of something slamming into it. Once, twice, Each impact shook the dresser against my back. When the door finally gave way, I had already armed myself with the nearest thing I could grab, a heavy desk lamp. Lila, or what was left of her, charged at me, her eyes glowing with something inhuman. She was brutal, stronger than a human should have been, her movements animalistic. I swung the lamp and connected with her shoulder, but it didn't faze her. She clawed at me, her nails raking across my arm. I screamed her name over and over, begging her to stop. In the end, I had no choice. I swung the lamp one last time, harder than I thought I could, and she crumpled to the floor. The apartment was silent again, save for my ragged breathing. Blood pooled around her body, seeping into the carpet. My hands shook as I dropped the lamp, the weight of what I'd done crashing over me. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at her lifeless form. It wasn't supposed to end like this. I sat alone in the wreckage of our apartment. The smell of blood lingered. I stared at the nasal spray still on the floor. I had been chasing a fantasy, desperate to find something extraordinary, something to make my life feel meaningful. And in the process, I destroyed everything that mattered. I didn't call anyone. I didn't explain. Packed a bag, and as I walked out the door, my phone buzzed. The words burned into my vision, standing stark against the dim glow of the screen. My grip tightened around my phone as I fished out the spray from my pocket. Instructions for use, Necrosleep. Step 1.